Hello, everyone, and welcome to this curated conversation with Sharon Kopriva. I'm Bradley Sumrall, curator of the collection for the Ogden Museum of Southern Art in New Orleans, Louisiana. And I'm here with Sharon Kopriva, who is an artist who has a long history with our museum. And thank you, Sharon, for being here today.
Thank you for having me here today. I appreciate all that your museum and you have done for me.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. For those of you that don't know Sharon's work, that means that you're not paying attention to Texas art or Southern art in general. But for those of you that might not know Sharon's work, she's a multidisciplinary artist who lives and works in Houston, Texas, in the Heights neighborhood, as well as summers spent in Hope, Idaho, where I visited her on the beautiful landscape of Hope. She's a multidisciplinary artist that works in painting and sculpting, installation and printmaking, but primarily known as a painter and a sculptor. Now, Sharon's background with the museum is that in 2012, I curated a major mid-career survey of Sharon's work called From Terra to Verde, The Art of Sharon Kopriva. And through that exhibition, we became really good friends. So, and she's currently in a new exhibition at the Ogden Museum called Entwined, Ritual Wrapping and Binding in Contemporary Southern Art. So today we're going to explore a little bit of those, well, we're going to explore every piece, I believe, of the work that's included in that exhibition. And we're also going to look at a piece that is in the Magnolia Ball silent auction coming up. Well, it's actually open right now. And she created a piece specifically for this auction. And the museum has decided to also make a print of this piece from the auction called Owls and Oleander. And that will be made available at a certain donation level that supports our Support Our South Fund. And that is a fund that's set up to kind of help us get through these difficult times during the COVID and the shutdowns. We are back open, and I invite everyone to come see Entwined, Ritual Wrapping and Binding in Contemporary Southern Art, especially to see Sharon Kopriva's work. So thank you, Sharon, for all that you've done for the museum as well.
Not finished yet. We'll hopefully be able to support it more. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate that. So let's talk about, I'm going to share some images from the exhibition, and let's talk about the tubers in particular to get started here, because those are relatively new.
Yes, I think 1915 was the summer of 1915 I made the first tuber.
Of when?
Summer of 1915, how about 2015?
2015, yeah. I was like, you weren't even born yet.
No, I wasn't even born then.
You're right.
In fact, that was my mother's birthday, 1915.
Okay. Well, I first saw this work, I believe at Kirk, well, in your studio a little bit, and then at Kirk Hopper. And it was a complete departure from the work I'd seen before with your papier-mâché pieces, and you're working with rope. Can you talk a little bit about where this came from?
Well, it came from, I needed a change in my sculpture. I'd already I moved in my painting from my religious themes in my history of Catholicism slowly into landscape. And that was so much inspired by the Northwest United States. And always the Texas swamps are still involved in that. They're still in there somewhere. But I was looking for something that would correspond to where I was in my paintings with my sculpture, because I was ready to move on there. And I had taken it was probably 1970 something. I had taken and that was 19, taken a rope sculpture 3-week class at Texas Tech University's summer camp. And Bill Lockhart was the instructor, and he taught us how to make really amorphic or abstract shapes in rope. And I was trying to figure what I could do to correspond to the paintings, and I saw that spool of rope in the studio in Idaho, and it just brought all that back. And I said, I wonder if I can make this rope, if I can remember, first of all, how we did that 30 years earlier, and then if I could actually form these into figurative-like sculptures. I knew they would never be specific. I mean, I guess if you get small enough rope, you could take 3 years and make one that was really realistic, but I really didn't want that either. So this is the one you have up now, is the very first one that I did.
It's a beauty. So you're building these around empty space, basically,
Yes.
right?
Yes, they're hollow inside. They're like vessel women. Yes.
Vessels, yeah. And they're headless. Is that intentional?
It was, and I didn't even know that it was going to be headless when I started. I just started it, and I worked my way through it. And when I got to the top, I liked the form without the head. And for many reasons, I mean, it also makes it non-dated. It makes it non-biased, non-everything. It becomes a form, a human form, sort of, that's really viewed as at a form, or a symbolistic or spiritual, but not necessarily a specific human.
You know, it makes me think of George Deroe when he was asked why his figures were nude, and he said, well, you know, that he didn't want it to be dated by fashion and current trends in clothing. You know, that the body's timeless.
Yeah, it does. I wanted these to be at least a little bit timeless. Yes.
And with this piece, tell us about this snake-like figure in the middle.
You know, there's so much material on the ground in Idaho, and that's from the driftwood yard, where God knows where that tree had been whenever, and it made its way down through the channels into the driftwood yard. But I immediately thought snake, but I immediately also thought arm. I immediately thought a lot of things, and I decided that yes, that piece needed that, and I tried it on there, and I didn't take it off. So.
Well, there's kind of a theme throughout the exhibition, and several pieces, two of which are yours, that talks about the snake and the kind of binding of the snake, the wrapping and the coiling of the snake. And it's usually something either protective, right, or kind of comforting, wrapping something around and supporting, but also referencing the Garden of Eden. Was there any thought of Eden when you were making this?
I was thinking more of female goddesses even, rather than Eden for this piece. But I have done pieces, of course, that deal with snakes in Eden, or just snakes. But this one's really because the piece started out feeling female anyway, and there's Medusa. There's so many other ways snakes, but this is not at all the Medusa either. I feel their snake is beautiful in this form. I don't see it as something at all ugly, and I see it as supportive of the figure, and also giving it strength, because snakes are also intelligence, strength. There are a lot of things that they're not given a fair credit for.
Well, I know much of your work is rooted in the in Aboriginal belief systems, but a lot in Peru, because as we explored in your survey exhibition, that was a really, your interest in Peruvian culture was a real turning point in your career.
And the
So I'm
snake is
thinking about
very
Pachamama, the Earth Mother, in Incan culture, and also the snake deity
Yes.
wrapped around her waist there, who is the guardian of the underworld, but also knowledge and wisdom.
Mhm.
And so that fits into everything that you just said. And it's a really, really powerful piece.
Well, thanks.
Well, you know, I've noticed how this new direction in your work with the rope and the coiling and the binding has started to spill over into your drawings and your paintings as well. So let's take a look at Breaking Bonds. Now, I saw this through images being developed, and then I believe you showed it for the first time in Japan. Is that correct?
Yes. And it was designed, I had to do this in a way I could carry this in my suitcase, or in fact, it was in a little tube that was only this wide as the widest piece. So they were rolled up and hung unframed in Japan, and it was kind of a new thing to me. And I decided I just didn't think, because of the subject, because of the way I really got into this the women's movement that was going on really forcefully, and I didn't want them bound by frames. Suddenly, I wanted them to have the freedom of just being stuck on the wall. So that's part of that. And once I did that, of course, it had to be done in Japan because there wasn't even time to frame them if, you know, if I was able to do that. So, but I ended up really feeling the rawness of the materials was so much more apparent not being covered with glass.
Yeah, I wish paper could always be shown without glass in front of it. And in a museum setting, it certainly can.
Which is great. So, and
you know, I think
yeah.
I was very excited to have a piece about breaking these bonds, breaking free of bindings and wrappings,
Right.
because so much of the rest of the exhibition, that is not the subject matter. It's about binding meaning to form, et cetera. And there's something here that's also about binding these women together.
Right.
And to make it clear to the viewers, there's 5 separate pieces, but yet they're all tied together through these rope-like.
They're connected with the materials. The ropes or the chains or whatever. After they've taken them off, they reconnect them to each other. It's kind of symbolizing the movement going on for women.
Yeah. So this obviously is inspired by the Me Too movement and the Show Your Worth movement and the empowerment of women through their voices, through speaking up, to break free of the bonds that have held them down and the wrappings that have held them down over the years. So can you kind of give us a reading of this piece from left to right?
Sure.
And what these figures mean?
And they're all involved in breaking away, and so she's small of stature and you know, very, very feminine and in a beauty of her own, but also she's not completely any race or ethnicity. All of them, as we move on to the second one, I started really thinking about African American women and the form and body forms, and how she is slipping out of the ropes. That was important, that she is causing them. And each of these women, the first one has her cutters. She has the wire cutters to cut herself out. And the second one has scissors in this hand back here. And she's cutting the rope and then she's slipping out of it. And they're very involved in what they're doing. They're not really aware that we're watching them. The third one has a ghost figure behind her, but I thought more about Russian women and about the Eastern women, and she's actually has a lock in her hand, and she's unlocked a chastity belt in this one. And then let's see, we move on, and the next one is, I'm trying to remember what. And,
she's removing a mask.
oh, that's right. Because actually, I just should have said at the beginning, even though they formed faces, I didn't want them that specific. So they're all wearing masks up until the fourth one. And she's removing her mask. And which is also, maybe that represents some things going on as we're living today, but and not at the time, I didn't know. But and the last one she's reaching her freedom. She hasn't flown off the page yet, but she's really getting there.
And so you've represented a range of ethnicities, a range of ages, but all of these women have been given the tools that they need to break free of these bad situations that they're in, whether
and they
they're
represent psychological as much as physical.
Physical or psychological.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's also what why the tools are sometimes almost transparent. You know, it's just like we are the ones who can break our own bonds. Not in every case. Sometimes in physical cases, of course, it's totally impossible, and we have to just work on it until we help each other. That's why they're still bound. But we can't always do psychological by ourselves. But there's just a lot of support going on now.
Well, it's a very powerful piece, and just for people that are only seeing this on video, these are life-scale figures. So this takes up an entire wall of a gallery, and it's striking in its scale as well as its material. I wish I had included some details, because there's collage and charcoal, and the surface is just immaculate. And that's something that runs throughout this exhibition with all of the artists, is the photographs just do not do them justice, because it's just a textural smorgasbord. I mean, the texture in this show is really, really, really impressive and varied. So, but even in this drawing, the surface is so beautiful.
I'm anxious to see the entire exhibition.
Yeah, well, it is open to the public now, but of course, not many of us are moving around freely just yet. But the exhibition will be up through February. So let's take a look at another piece. This one's very, very special to me, and I know it's very, very personal to you. This was one of your closest friends,
very close
friend, Keenholz, and someone who I've known in the past 10 years and become friends with myself. But you had a 40-year relationship with her before she passed away.
About that, yeah, I think, well, yeah, she was, well, yeah, around, I guess maybe 35, I don't know, somewhere, enough.
Right.
Close enough to, yes. And I haven't really seen the piece since it left the studio. You know, it's kind of been, I kind of, if it were still here, I'd probably still be making marks on it. It was one of those things that I was making marks on top of marks because I was going through my own mental memories of Nancy and the things that happened to her, and the things that I was involved with, and trying to get an inner peace for me, and try to symbolically provide some kind of peace and transformation for her symbolically.
Well, this piece really speaks to the idea of ritual in the exhibition. Even though there's no physical wrapping and binding, it's only represented through the binding up of the figure and the wrapped in birds, giving buoyancy to the figure. But that idea that you were working out your own issues, your own grief, and closure through the drawing of this piece really speaks to the idea of ritual. that this is a process that you engage in, a psychological process that you work out through your hands.
It was definitely that for me. It was definitely a process, and so many times I went over and over and over. I don't know how many layers of birds that ended up on that piece, because I was kept going another layer, another layer, another layer. It was just about all I worked on for several months. I was really involved psychologically in that.
Well, it's a real honor to unveil this piece to the public at the Ogden Museum, and I know that when it gets back to your studio in March, that you'll probably start working on it again.
If it's not behind glass, I hope Nancy is happy with it. I'm sure she's happy that it's in your museum. I hope she's happy with the product.
Well, I know it's a powerful, powerful piece.
Okay.
The detail is just amazing, and it's the texture and the subject.
She was a powerful, powerful woman. She had a lot of inner strength, and used it well.
And a powerful artist as well.
And a powerful artist as well. Mm-hmm. Of her own right, in her own right.
Absolutely. And the final piece from the exhibition is not actually in your dedicated gallery, but is in the atrium space leading into the exhibition. There's Urzy Schwartz, this piece, a major installation by Ashley Pridmore.
Love it.
And a Jacqueline Bishop piece, kind of outside welcoming you in with a Shawn Major piece.
I love showing with Urzy and Ashley and Jackie Bishop. That's
and Shawn Major.
And Shawn Major. What a thrill.
Yeah, this exhibition is unintentionally but beautifully comprised of mostly female artists, and they're all powerful voices in their own right. But talk a little bit about this piece. It started as a scratchboard piece, right?
It started as a scratchboard, and for a while, and I had every once in a while I do clean my studio, and I usually find something that I had gotten a little frustrated with and just put aside, because I know that I can find a resolve for that piece in the way I want. And that's what happened to this one. I was going to be having an exhibition that January a year ago, and I pulled up this and I said, I just need to finish the head of the snake. Just wipe it out and redo it, because it wasn't right. And he did not want to be peaceful. And I just called him he. So I guess he's male. I tell snakes. But he wanted to have his mouth open and be communicating something to you, whether it be warning or you know, he's welcoming you into the exhibition. He's not trying to keep you outside the door, but
well, he certainly seems like he's protecting that tree.
He's protecting the tree.
Whereas in the original story, the snake kind of invited Eve and Adam to come and eat from that tree,
yeah.
or Eve in particular. But here it seems like he wants to protect that knowledge. Maybe we shouldn't have it, but it's a beautiful piece. It's a smaller piece in the exhibition. And I think I first saw it at Deborah Colton Gallery in an exhibition you had there. And it ended up in the collection of the great Texas collector, Marilyn Oshman. And I thank her for graciously lending to this exhibition.
Good lady, very good.
Yes, she is. So those are the works in the exhibition, Entwined. But we'll also look at this other piece that you made. I don't know how you made this so fast, but I think I asked you about possibly making or donating a piece that you might have for the Magnolia Ball auction, and you pulled this together in lightning speed. And I thought it would just be a little sketch because you made it so fast. And then you brought us the image, and wow, what a beauty.
Oh, well, thanks. My oleander bush, and I never planted that bush. It just came up on its own, but it was really blooming so full that, and it was like late afternoon and early morning that I would see it, but I think really early morning. And I decided I should do that because we'd all been through so many difficult times the last few months, and we didn't really need any more threatening things. Not that oleander's not one of the most poisonous plants on earth.
There's always a little danger in your work, always
there
a
has
little
to be a little bit of danger, but I had seen a screech owl. I'd heard that little guy first, and then I went outside, and there he was, right in the middle of my oleander bush. And I thought about that, and I said, I have to put some screech owls in here. It can't, just. And so I had to really go back and do some research. And sure enough, he's an eastern screech owl. I remember seeing him. He looks just like that guy. And so I put one in, and I said it needs two more. And I'm going to have to make up a story here because they say screech owls, they don't kind of cluster or flock. They're kind of solitary, but they do mate and have kids. So we have here then a mom and pop and a kid.
Ah.
And that's my story because I wanted 3 owls in that bush. I didn't just want one. So there they are.
So, and your neighborhood has a great many screech owls, I've heard.
Oh, I have to say, my neighbor around the corner works for the Wildlife Center of Texas. She volunteers there, and she's one of the ones who they take in all kinds of animals, but they take in baby birds and a lot of screech owls among them that have either gotten lost or injured, and they repair them and make them well. And she's one of the ones that releases them. And so, of course, she lives in this neighborhood, so she releases a lot of them here in the Heights.
What a beautiful thing.
It's great. It's great. I love their noise, and it's you have to get a little used to it.
Right.
It does sound like someone screaming.
Yeah.
But they're little. They're not very big. They're little guys. They screech out.
Well, if anyone views this in time, this is available, and it goes to support the museum, and you can bid on it online through the museum's website. Just go to www.ogdenmuseum.org and look for the Magnolia Ball, and you can find this piece. It's a real beauty, and if you can't afford it right now, then sometime in July we'll be releasing a limited edition print of this piece that will go to donations. Will support the museum through the South Fund, which is a fund that was set up to help us get through these difficult times of COVID, and I know I'm going to get a print myself. And I hope others do as well. I'm not sure of the run, and I'm not sure of the date that this will drop, but it'll be coming up soon, and you can find the information on our website.
I think it's so great. The Ogden Museum has just been so helpful to so many artists from the South, and a lot of Texas artists are among them. And I just can't say enough about how wonderful it is to have your museum there open for all of us.
Well, thank you. I think the Ogden Museum is situated in a very special place to make connections among these artists in the South. And one one of the moments that I find really satisfying in the exhibition that's currently up, Entwined, is that you and Jeffrey Cook are right next door to each other. And Jeffrey's such an important artist to the museum and to New Orleans. But maybe you mention a little bit about your relationship with Jeffrey.
Well, the first gallery that I showed in that was Howard Barnett, and I met Jeffrey Cook there. And at the time, it was early because he was breakdancing. He was this adorable young man, and so talented. And his art was hanging on the wall, and he was dancing in the street, and I was just so thrilled that I could see him, and we really got to be close. I met Jeffrey, and I met Jackie Bishop at that time. And that must have been in the late 80s, somewhere in there.
Or early 90s, probably.
Maybe
yeah.
early 90s.
Early
That could
90s.
be too, because my solo show with Howard was 94, so probably early 90s.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but we just struck up a friendship, and I saw him again in Houston when he had a residency at the row houses, and I was very, very saddened by his such an early death for him. And
he was taken from us way too young, indeed.
Way too young. We had so much more we wanted from Jeffrey.
Well, you know, Jeffrey was very important to the museum. One of our first educators, hammered the first nail in the wall to hang the first painting with Roger Ogden when the museum opened, and choreographed and performed a dance for our grand opening celebration, and has some amazing works in the permanent collection. But, you know, I knew of your love of Jeffrey's work, and the way that your work speaks to Jeffrey's, and having you right next door to one another it's just a really powerful moment in the exhibition. So
it's just really meaningful to me. Thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you. Anything else you want to add? What's that beautiful painting behind you there, Sharon? Is that new?
I'm working on the one with the big nest.
Oh God, it's gorgeous.
Oh well, I'm just in the middle of it. I got to tie it all together, but it's got one egg in the middle. It's kind of representative of what we're going through right now, because that's the survival egg. And all those crazy green birds are going to surround that egg, and we're going to make it through this COVID thing, and that egg will be representing our future and our new renewal once we get through this.
Beautiful.
So.
Well, on that positive note, I just want to thank you, Sharon, for speaking with me today. And I look forward to a time when you can come and visit the exhibition.
I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it sometime as soon as I can get there. And again, thanks to the Ogden for having me in it. So,
we're honored to have you there, as always.
Thanks to you for doing all the work and hanging it, and those beautiful essays for each artist that I hope everyone reads.
Well, you can see the entire exhibition online if you can't make it to the museum, and read more about Sharon's work and the other artists in the exhibition. So just visit www.ogdenmuseum.org and look for all of our current exhibitions, but especially Entwined, featuring Sharon Kopriva. Thank you, Sharon.
Hey, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.